Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. Well, what do you got for me today?
All right, Claire. Now, I just got to give you a little bit of forewarning. You can't get all squirrely. I'm going to tell this case a little different. Not really, just a little. So don't get all squirrely like and be all, who is talking about? So just...
I promise nothing.
I know it. All right. So our win is, it's a big span of from the 1980s to 2000 and still now of finding shit out. But
We like those.
confirmed, I do. But confirmed is 2002 to 2004. Our where is London. So for nearly 2 decades, the suburban streets of southwest Wales had been stalked by a violent man who is described as a handsome young man with the gift of gab. This man stood approximately 6 feet tall and 225 pounds. He was a bouncer and a wheel clamper. Now I had a rough idea what a wheel... Yeah, I had a rough idea what a wheel clamper was, but I Googled it. And it's one of them fellers that put the boots on a car tire.
Oh, so, I didn't know that was their name.
I didn't either. This man, he hated women, and he had one hell of an ego that would lead him to go on a killing spree eventually. And when I say he hated women, I mean he hated all women, but particularly blondes. Now, whether he came across a bystander that was just waiting for a bus, or women who were his girlfriends, or even girls going to school, he would stop and proposition them for sex. And as far as he was concerned, much like many other violent offenders that we've discussed, this man felt that women were objects and that they were only good for either sex or as a punching bag. And any of those women that he would proposition for sex, as young as 14 years old, by the way, if they rejected him, he felt they deserved to be punished.
How old was he?
I ain't told you his name or anything yet. But he's like this through his entire life.
Right, but when he was trying to diddle a 14-year-old, how old was he? Like it's during the same chunk?
He never outgrows them. So as a teenager into his 30s, he's trying to have sex with 13, 14-year-olds. He's disgusting. But much like other egotistical assailants, he had his type. He preferred blondes, but in reality, no female was safe from his potential assaults. It's just if he had his pick of females, he would prefer to assault a blonde. Now, his preference on locating potential victims was at bus stops. This sumbitch that I'm talking about is known in the media as the bus stop stalker, the bus stop killer, or the hammer man. Our transportation slaughterer was born Levi Rabbits on May 17th, 1968 in London. His proud parents were Jean Bellfield and Joseph Rabbits. They were married, but the reason I tell you his mom's maiden name is because eventually, later in life, Levi changes his last name to his mother's maiden name. So he goes from Levi Rabbits to Levi Bellfield.
He's got daddy issues?
It's more like mommy issues, and we're about to talk about that. So a little back history on Levi. He was the youngest of 4 siblings. He had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. When Levi was 10 years old, his father, Joseph, died of leukemia. His dad died when he was 10. And now, when Levi was 12, he had a girlfriend, you know, like one of those little elementary school, middle school girlfriends where they just hold hands at recess.
Have lunch.
Yeah. Her name was Patsy Morris. She was found strangled to death, and her murder to this day is unsolved. Now, police are reinvestigating because hindsight's 2020, and they believe that Levi killed her. Levi's criminal history did officially begin when he was a child, much like many of our other murderers before him. Levi was convicted at 13 years old for burglary as well as an assault charge in 1981. I think the loss of his father was hard on Levi because, 10 is hard to lose a parent, and he is the baby. And as they say, and I'm sorry to all the youngest children out there, but they tend to be a little on the bratty side.
It's because they're needy. And none of the rules apply to them.
I don't know if Levi just needed some grief counseling or a good ass whooping or I don't know what, but maybe it was just the loss of his dad started him on a downward spiral, or maybe his mom was just super distracted and he took advantage of no one watching after him.
I think all the things. I think it was probably hard on the mother, and maybe dad was the disciplinarian, so when dad got sick, there was really no structure, and then she was just lost
And
in
he
her
was the
grief,
baby.
and he was forgotten about.
Well, he didn't get forgotten. He was the youngest of 5 kids, and from what I read, his mother doted on Levi. And in fact, it's been stated that Jean, Levi's mother, wiped Levi's butt for him until he was 13, and they shared a bed until he was 13.
Did he have
T-Rex arms? No.
Tyrannosaurus Rex arms. I know, it's like, I know it's not
said
Triceratops because them's got the horns. 3 of them. But
maybe he was horny
T-Rex
and that's why mom kicked him out.
Ew.
But she kicked him out of her bed and stopped wiping his butt for him at 13. And that's also when he became a burglar. So I don't know if maybe she kicked him out because he broke the law and was getting in trouble, or if she kicked him out of his bed, out of her bed.
Because he's 13?
Right. But it coincides with the same year he got kicked out of his mom's bed. He also got arrested for burglary and assault.
I can't move past she was still wiping his ass till he was 13. Unless he has freakishly short arms, he seems like he's capable of doing that for himself.
She really loved her baby.
No.
She wanted to keep him a baby.
No. She was tired of washing all them dirty underwears with racing stripes. And she's like, I'll show you how it's done.
Ew. Well, Levi would go through school with behavioral issues.
No shit.
Levi shot up to 6 feet tall as a teenager. He was described as having a high-pitched, squeaky voice and caveman-type personality traits.
Picture his knuckles dragging on the ground.
And despite these qualities, he was known to have dated many beautiful girls. A few of these girls would become pregnant with Levi's child at the same time as a few others. He's lucky that, and so are the girls.
How are they lucky?
That he didn't spread STDs because he was such a man whore.
Instead, they were left with bastard children.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to assume he doesn't financially support. So they're the lucky ones, all right?
Mm-hmm. Behind closed doors, Levi was controlling and abusive. He would abuse his girlfriends both physically and mentally, as well as sexual abuse, because no one was allowed to tell Levi no. He would use extreme intimidation and extreme charm to take what he wanted. So he'd abuse the crap out of these girls and then do the, oh, I'm so sorry, I love you, you're so beautiful, it'll never happen again. And these girls felt they were lucky to be with him and forgive him, and then the pattern of behavior would carry on. One of his many girlfriends found a magazine in the trash where Levi had scratched out all the faces of blondes in the magazine with a knife. When she confronted Levi, he said, they were bitches who weren't worth a bolt. And
is his mom blonde?
His mom is a brunette. He said he loathed blonde women with big boobs. He continued to tell his girlfriend he would go hunting in alleyways with the intention of wanting to kill, rape, or stab blonde women. Police in the area knew Levi as a woman beater, but the majority of the abused women would not press charges. Eventually, after Levi finished with school, he ran wheel clamping business that I was telling you about, where he puts the boots on the tires.
He ran the business?
Uh-huh. He started his business, which operated in and around West Drayton, which is where he lived. He had a coworker named Ricky, and as Levi got older, he still desired to date underage girls. And his coworker Ricky said he knew of a teenager that Levi was dating. Now, I suspect Levi was like 19, 20, and she was like 17 or 18. So it's not too crazy, but she was still a minor-ish. Ricky described Levi's girlfriend as a naive little girl, and that Levi did not treat her very well. And that girl had a sister who was younger, and she was a teeny tiny little 14-year-old who looked younger than 14. Levi bragged to Ricky about having sex with the 14-year-old, then offered Ricky to buy her off of him.
The fuck?
Yeah.
What year?
I'm not sure. You're asking me to do the math in. Like late 1980s, early 1990s. Because by 22 years old, one of Levi's abused girlfriends went to police to report the abuse that Levi had inflicted on her. Levi walked into the police station to confront her. This confrontation ended with Levi punching the police officer in the face, and the now ex-girlfriend dropped the charges against Levi, but Levi was convicted of assaulting the police officer, and that was in 1991. He also has convictions for theft and different driving offenses, which aren't important, but it's just a clear pattern of him not being a law-abiding citizen. He just doesn't care. He does what he wants. It's Levi's world and everybody else is living in it. And like I said before, he worked as a bouncer, which helped his ego grow because he was able to control who could go where into these clubs. And he essentially had nobody to keep him in check. He thought he was untouchable. Now, nobody knows officially what triggered Levi, but he all of a sudden began attacking random women. I guess abusing his girlfriends was too boring. Levi would come up, usually behind his random victims, and assault them with a 2-pound hammer.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
They lived?
There are several open hammer attack cases going back to the early 1980s of women who were assaulted from behind and either died or woke up in the hospital unsure of what happened. So, and at that point, it was before we had all these security cameras, so they don't know because there's no DNA evidence left behind. And at some point, Levi gets married. He's such a swell feller that even when he was married, he sought sex with other women. He thought his penis was God's gift to women, and it couldn't just be for one lucky woman, but for all the ladies. And with this kind of mentality towards a relationship, I'm sure it will be no surprise when I tell you that Levi would go on to marry and divorce 4 times. This man whore also fathered 11 children with 5 different women. And those are just the children that we know about. It's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Now, I was curious because once he was married, where was he taking all these other ladies that he was having sex with? And I can tell you
The
that this
hardware
swell
store?
guy,
He
he
didn't want to
kept a
use his own hammer.
he kept a separate apartment where he would frequently bring back prostitutes and women that he met while he was doing his bouncer stuff. And he would give them drugs and alcohol, and then he would have violent sex, which left a lot of these women feeling raped because they did not consent to it. And I could tell you one of his wives, her name was Emma, she does come forward eventually and says that he was so violent during sex that there was one time that he took her sweater and wrapped it around her throat and was strangling her while he was having sex with her. And she thought she was going to die. And then the next morning when she got up and went downstairs, he's just like, "Morning, babe," and acted like everything was normal. So, like, this guy is just not wrapped tight. Levi would be found lurking around bus stops. He would sit and wait for a lone female. Levi offered a number of teenagers as young as 14 years old ketamine or cocaine, and then he would have sex or rape them in the back of his white van. When I read that he drove a white van, it did make me kind of roll my eyes of, there's something about those white work vans. They're just creepy, and this doesn't help. He kept a duvet cover in the back of the van specifically for random sexual escapades, whether they be willing participants or his victims. He would prefer to assault younger blondes. Now, time for me and my timeline of information. April 16th, 1999, a woman named Elizabeth Chow, she was a young computer science college student who vanished. She was 19 years old when she was kidnapped, raped, and tortured, and then murdered by Levi. Her remains as of 2023 have not yet been found. Even though Levi has confessed to her rape, torture, and murder, he's given details on what he did to this girl, and he drew a map to show the police where he discarded the young woman's remains, but they have done nothing with it. So I could not imagine being her family. They've been sitting on this information for nearly 2 years, and have not moved forward with trying to find her remains. October 15th, okay, so that was 1999. October 15th, 2001, Levi crossed paths with 17-year-old Anne Marie Reaney. She and her boyfriend had just gotten into a disagreement and she was walking home. Levi walked up behind the young blonde teenager and offered to give her a ride home. She declined. He was immediately furious. He grabbed her and attempted to abduct her. She fought hard to free herself. She escaped his grasp only a few feet from his car. So there's an attempted abduction. By 2002, Levi was 34 years old. He had 9 serious assault convictions and several sexual assaults. Nearly all the sexual assaults were on a girlfriend or wives or whatever. And he spent only 1 year in prison for all of those charges, which I found completely disgusting. Officers would describe Levi as very jokey, like he's your best friend, but he's a cunning individual with a viciously violent side. He can switch from being nice to being nasty instantly. By March 20th, 2002, 12-year-old Rachel Cowles was walking home from school when a man pulls over and he says he's her new neighbor. The man insists on her getting into his red car. The man is believed to have been Levi because Levi was driving a red car at that point in time, and he drove off when a police officer drove by. The following day, March 21st, 2002, 13-year-old Amanda Dowler, her friends and family nicknamed her Millie. Millie was on the train headed home, and she had the munchies. She wanted Dave's favorite snack,
Frito pie.
chips. Close. She wanted some chips to munch on, so she decided to get off the train one stop early. She called her dad, and she told him she was going to be home in 30 minutes due to her little detour. Millie was last seen walking in a neighborhood where Levi was living. Roughly 6 months later, on September 18th, 2002, Millie's remains were found. On February 4th, 2003, Levi set his sights on a 19-year-old girl named Marcia McDowell. Marcia was a talented violinist and a netball or basketball player. She was quiet and she was hardworking. On February 4th, Marcia spent the evening out at the movies with friends, and after getting off her bus, she began walking home alone. Marcia was last seen alive getting off the bus 111. She was seen on the CCTV footage stepping off the bus. She began walking towards her house. She didn't realize she was being followed by a predator. Levi ran up behind her as she approached her front door. She was a mere feet away from the safety of her home. But Levi smashed her over the head with that 2-pound hammer without any kind of warning. She suffered 3 blows to the back of her skull. She had multiple skull fractures and bleeding around her brain. She died within a day in the hospital. December 2003, 33-year-old Irma Dragoshki was a hairdresser. She was sitting at a bus stop when a vehicle with 2 men pull up. Levi was with a friend, who he would later say was his accomplice, Sungail Garu. Levi told his buddy, "Hey, watch this," as he jumped out of the vehicle and rushed Irma. He began hitting Irma in the head with, again, his weapon of choice, his hammer. She does survive, but he caused such severe injuries. She has no memory of what happened to her for like a 4-hour period, which I guess is a blessing for her, that she doesn't have to remember being assaulted.
Right.
Levi would pull up in his car alongside women on the sidewalk or on the street and just chat with them. If these women would reject Levi, he would become enraged. I guess sweet talking the victim into his clutches and trying to get him back to his apartment was no longer working because he's getting older and squishier. So,
No, I say it's a personality issue.
well, at some point, he was able to get these girls to come back to his apartment. Maybe when he was in his 20s and a little bit more on the attractive, more fit side, it was easier for him to get girls of the age he preferred back to do drugs and drink with him. And now that he's in his 30s, and I sent you a picture where he's not fat, he's not buff, he's a big guy. He looks like a bouncer. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? Like, he definitely fits that
Yeah, he's not a twig
mental
man.
picture. Yeah. May 28th, 2004, Levi targeted an 18-year-old student, Kate Sheedy. She attended a convent school that Levi drove past regularly. Kate and her friends went out that evening to celebrate their last day of school. She took her usual bus home. She spotted a man in a white van. He was parked in the road with his lights off but the engine running. Kate had that red flag feeling rush over her, so she decided to cross the street to avoid the vehicle. The man behind the wheel, when the opportunity presented itself, he floored it and ran Kate over in the road with his car. And to add insult to quite literal injury, Levi then put the van in reverse and backed up and ran over her again.
Did people
And then
see this?
no. He took off, leaving poor Kate with life-threatening injuries. Kate tried to stand up because, when you have that adrenaline rush, people don't realize how bad they're hurt.
I don't know. I haven't been run over.
Well, I'm just saying in general, you know how they say that if you've been severely injured, the adrenaline allows your body to continue to function. Like you haven't really processed just how badly you're injured. That's what happened with Kate. She tried to stand up only to stumble a few steps and collapsing back down.
She was run over twice and stood up?
Uh-huh. She managed to scramble for her phone. She called an ambulance and her mother. Her parents come running out of the house where Kate lived just a few feet away to find their daughter lying in the streets with her belongings strewn about on the road. The first thing Kate did, typical 18-year-old little girl, was ask her mom to pick up her new shoes that were a gift the month prior on her 18th birthday. And that made me kind of chuckle in like a sad way. Like she doesn't understand how badly she just got hurt and she's worried about her new shoes.
They might have been pricey. Did she live?
Yeah. It wasn't until she arrived at the hospital that they learned how severe her injuries were. Her lower back had been ripped open, her liver was split in two, and she had multiple broken ribs and a broken collarbone. She managed to keep breathing on her own despite one lung being punctured and the other lung collapsed. Fortunately, she does survive, and after more than 1 month in the hospital, she was able to go home. However, she had to learn how to do basic care for herself all over again. She had to learn how to walk, eat, and wash herself. In 2004, Levi found out that a man named Peter Rodriguez was having sex with one of his many ex-girlfriends. And because this control freak of a man doesn't want anyone else to have sex with any women ever.
He doesn't like people touching his things.
Levi shows up at Peter's house and beat him with his 2-pound hammer until Peter was unconscious on the floor.
Somebody needs to take the hammer.
Right? Levi runs off. Eventually, Levi shows back up and asks the police officers that were outside Peter's house, what happened? I was just like, man, I've heard of like the criminals coming back and watching like the chaos outside the scene that they caused, but I don't know. This guy's such an idiot. On August 20th, 2004, Levi spotted 22-year-old blonde Emily Delagrange. She was a student from France. She had just missed her bus stop. But little did Emily know, her every move was being followed since she exited her bus. Levi rushed Emily, much like his previous victims. Actually, the attack on her was nearly identical to the attack on Marcia. She suffered 3 left-handed blows to her head, and 0 DNA evidence could be found. Emily died that night in the hospital. However, this time, police watch over 2,000 hours of CCTV footage looking for any clues. When they finally spot something, they see a white van. It was a white Ford courier van, and they could see the van had a few distinctive features, like it was missing a hubcap, and it had a black mounting rack on the roof. Unfortunately, they could not read the tags on the van, and there were 26,000 similar vans registered in Britain. Literally a needle in a haystack. 6 days later, so on August 22nd, Levi was found by that girlfriend that I told you about, Emma, that he choked with a sweater. He tried to commit suicide by overdosing on antidepressants. Levi broke down sobbing to her and said, "You don't know what I've done." Levi was admitted into a mental hospital where he tells the staff that he was feeling suicidal and very low. However, he decides the next day that the doctors are all a bunch of idiots and he signs himself out of the hospital. Now, through all of these attacks, the police had a hotline for tips and appealed to the public to help find this murderer. The police had 129 messages from various women saying, hey, my ex-boyfriend's violent. He could have done this. However, one specific message was from a former girlfriend that named Levi as a sexually violent man and even stated that he was a wheel clamper who owned a white van.
I can't get over the when you say he's a wheel clamper, it sounds like some sort of insult, not a job title. Like, you son
Sure
bitch,
does.
wheel clamper? What did you just call me?
Yeah.
Like, he's a wheel clamper.
You never know. It could be. She left the police Levi's phone number. Now, this might get confusing for you, Claire, so stay focused. Keep your brain whole from leaking out all this information. At this point in the police investigation, so we're in November 2004, the detectives received a complaint from a man. So keep in mind, the girlfriend just left that message, right?
I don't see how they don't have a shit ton of complaints of being smacked with a hammer and they're just randomly whooped.
So they have a lot of complaints, but there's just no evidence, no witnesses, there's nothing.
The hammer indent on the back of somebody's head?
So they know it's the same person. They just have no evidence of who it could be. Now, at this point, so they've got the girlfriend that's called one of the 129 calls that were placed to police that's specifically named Levi. And now also at this point, so we're in November 2004, the detectives received a complaint from a man who said he sold his white courier van to another man who never registered the van in his own name. This individual claimed that he was still receiving parking tickets in his name for the van that he had sold. The man provided investigators with the buyer's cell phone number, which was the same number that girlfriend provided, which was traced back to Levi. And fun fact, thanks to his job as a wheel clamper, Levi was able to use more than 20 different vehicles per year to try to abduct or attack victims. Some of these vehicles, most of these vehicles, were never registered or in someone else's name. So, side note, the reason the police had Levi's cell in their system already is this turd of a man called police to report that his neighbor was a terrorist with Al-Qaeda, but it turned out that the neighbor was just an innocent Italian man that Levi found annoying. Things were all starting to point towards Levi. The girlfriend saying he's sexually violent. This is his phone number. This other guy's calling in and saying, I sold a white van to this guy. I'm getting tickets from this garage for this van.
Yeah.
And he provides Levi's number. Police already have Levi in the system because like with where he's living, with his address, because of him making some bullshit complaint about his neighbor. And now, thanks to those pesky parking tickets, police track the van to the garage where Levi's getting all these tickets. Once they get to take a gander at their van, they match the van to the one seen in the CCTV footage where Emily was attacked. They run Levi's cell phone and see that he was in the area when she was attacked. And the detectives continue to dig until they find links that connect him to other cases of all these hammer attacks. So now on November 22nd, 2004, Levi was now 39 years old and he was finally arrested. But his ego was not crushed even as he awaited trial in prison. He bragged to his cellmate, the cellmate's name was Peter Jarvis, about murdering Emily. He told his cellmate that he murdered a prostitute as well. Peter said Levi had a caveman mentality when it came to his views on women. He quoted Levi as saying, if you feed them and keep them, you can do what you want with them. It's a really disgusting way to look at anybody. On November 25th, Levi was charged with 3 counts of rape in Surrey and West London. While awaiting trial, police questioned Levi in regards to the disappearance of Millie. On December 9th, 2004, he was charged with assaulting a woman in Twickenham between 1995 and 1997. He remained in custody. Levi was rearrested, though, and charged with Emily's murder on March 2nd, 2006, along with the attempted murder of Katie Sheedy, the girl that he ran over, and the attempted murder and causing grievously bodily harm to Irma Dragoski. On May 25th, 2006, Levi was charged with the murder of 19-year-old Marcia McDonnell. By February 25th, 2008, the jury found Levi guilty. Afterwards, Levi decided not to attend his sentencing. He said it was due to bad publicity. Levi received a whole life sentence for the murders of Marcia, Emil, as well as the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy, and the whole life sentence means no parole. He will die in prison. Another not so fun fact, as of 2023, Levi has confessed to 6 more rapes and assaults on other women. Police suspect that Levi is responsible for roughly 20 more attacks that are currently unsolved. Police also fear that the 50-year-old was a member of a pedophile ring which drugged and gang raped school-age girls, and they used his apartment. They still have not been able to track down that pedophile ring.
Whoa. How do they know they used his apartment?
I guess things that he's said and the number of complaints that they've got. Like, when I tell you this guy is disgusting, he's so disgusting. He would get these girls back in his apartment, they would take drugs, and then whatever happened is what happened, and they were left feeling like they did it to themselves. Like, they put themselves in that situation, and most of them didn't press charges against him, but it's allowed him to get away with so much.
Teach your children, one, don't do drugs, but certainly don't do drugs with strangers.
Right? On June 23rd, 2011, Levi was tried for the murder of Millie Dowler. His strategy was nearly as despicable as he was. He would not testify. He would simply have his attorneys cross-examine the family of his victim. They put the older sister and her parents through hell. They discussed the fact that the parents had their own sexual kinks, asking about Mr. Dowler's collection of bondage materials like a ball gag and leather mask.
Who doesn't have one? I'm just kidding.
That's supposedly... and then paddles that...
You're going too far now.
that supposedly Millie had accidentally found. Now, the level of embarrassment that her family had to endure to get justice for their murdered loved one was shocking and cruel, because they tried to make it like Millie was out and about, and it was because Mr. Dowler had his kinks that they tried to make it like Levi wasn't as crazy as he was, because other people have sexual fetishes as well. But I feel like the big difference here is if Mr. and Mrs. Dowler are on the same
consenting
page.
Adult.
Yes, that's very much different. However, when they're asking the entire family about his collection of kinky stuff, it's just not right. It has nothing to do with their daughter being kidnapped and murdered. He received another Lifetime Achievement Award for being a piece of shit and was found guilty of murdering Millie. Now, Levi converted to the Islamic religion in 2012 and changed his name from Levi Bellfield to Yusuf Rahim. Now, some believe that he converted to end the ever-growing conflict between the Islamic prisoners and himself. However, the prison staff believed he converted because the food is better, because they cook it based off of being kosher and things like that. And he gets more privileges because since they pray 5 times a day, he gets to take more breaks. So, either way, more fun
he
facts.
Wanted snacks.
Yeah. More fun facts. Levi is one of 68 whole life prisoners in the UK. Now, to put that in perspective for you, Claire, there's roughly 8,554 prisoners right now serving life sentences in the UK, but only 68 of those will not have the option of parole. That's a lot of people that are like, you're going to serve life in prison. Just kidding. Also, fun fact time. Levi's mother, Jean, believes her baby boy, Levi, is innocent of all the things that he'd been accused of.
Of course, because she wants her snuggle buddy back.
Right? Nearly 5 years later, in 2016, Levi finally admitted to murdering Millie. He told police officers that he abducted the young girl, took her to his apartment where he raped and tortured her for over the course of 14 hours. He then drove Millie to his mother's house, where he backed down the long driveway and raped the girl on the trunk of his car in broad daylight. Levi then took Millie to yet another location where he continued to violate this barely teenaged girl until he decided to strangle the 13-year-old to death the following day, which is so heartbreaking to hear about. I realize her family needs closure, but you figure that's so long after she had died and it keeps being rehashed. It's so tough for them. And shortly after his mother passed away, Levi began admitting to all his wrongdoings, all these rapes and murders. So I think he was saying it wasn't him because he's trying to save face for his mommy. He didn't want her mad at him. More fun fact time. It's suspected that Levi's used a total of 42 different aliases.
That's it. You know what? That wasn't deep thinking. He just forgot and had to come up with other names.
Right? And a side note about this hammer-wielding whack job, he began corresponding with a woman in her 40s about 3 years ago, so around 2020, and she began to visit him regularly. She visits him once or twice a week for 2 hours at a time. They sit across the table from one another and mingle with each other and the other inmates and their families. And in April or May of 2022, Levi got down on one knee and proposed to this blonde love in front of shocked prison staff. And, shockingly, she said yes. And in case you forgot, because this wackadoo blonde woman, who's now engaged to a violent rapist and murderer, seems to have forgotten, Levi's serving 3 life sentences for murdering 3 blonde girls.
Figured it out. She's just glad she won't have to do his laundry.
She don't guts to worry about him cheating on her with other women.
Yes, that too.
So it's caused quite the uproar because
just really other men.
These young girls that he murdered will never get the opportunity to have that proposal moment thanks to Levi. And in May of 2022, the Ministry of Justice confirmed that Levi is engaged and has applied to be married while in prison, but he would need to get the permission of the governor at the HM prison, Franklin, where he's being held. But there's no laws stopping him. They were denied originally, and Levi hired an attorney and was fighting for his basic human rights to wed his little love. I think it's disgusting.
I think she needs to be examined.
Right? I've got pictures of her. Could you imagine finding out that's where 30,000 pounds or essentially $38,000 of your tax money was going? Was to allow
a jail
this
wedding?
To a jail wedding for a guy that's serving life for murdering little girls. Like, he's not a good feller. But he's over the moon and he's going around telling other inmates that he's engaged or that he's got a fiance. And as of June 16th of 2023, he and his bride have been granted the permission to wed. So as far as I'm aware, they're not married yet, but they were just given permission to have their wedding. Disgusting. Because then, you know what he's going to apply for next? Those conjugal visits. I'm sure they're going to end up cranking out some more children. Another final fun fact. A 37-year-old heroin addict named Michael Stone is currently in prison for the July 9th, 1999 murders of 45-year-old Dr. Lynn Russell and her 6-year-old daughter, Megan Russell, and the brutal assault on Lynn's other daughter, 9-year-old Josie. She survived the ordeal. The mother and her 2 young daughters were walking home from a school swimming competition when they were attacked by a man. This man tied them up, blindfolded the 3, and beat each one of them with his hammer. Now, Levi's confessed to this, and he said he's supposedly provided details in his confession to the assaults and for the murders of Lynn and Megan and the assault on Josie in 2017. Okay. Police have done nothing with this information. Michael was eligible, the guy that's currently in prison and says, I didn't do this. Michael was eligible for parole in 2022, but he refused the opportunity due to the fact that he would have to say that he was guilty and he was sorry for his crimes. But he's insisting he didn't kill them. He didn't assault them. He didn't tie them up. He didn't do anything to these people. And the only evidence, you ready for this? The only evidence that convicted Michael was the testimony of a jailhouse snitch who claimed Michael confessed to the crimes. But now here you are, you've got Levi giving details, nobody else other than the person that did it could possibly have telling police, yeah, so I did this. And nobody's done anything about it. This poor man. I mean, granted, I hope he's at least sober now, but from 1999 to now, and there's a possibility that he didn't even do it. It's
Yeah.
really sad. It's sick. But yeah, that's my case of Levi Bellfield. He's a violent piece of shit. And I can't believe that he's getting married. Like,
I'm gonna hope
yeah.
that she was all. I didn't think that they'd approve that.
No,
But
so I
then
can send
she
you some.
started talking to him, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't
I
know.
didn't want to waste my time spending too much effort into how they actually met. But from one of the articles that I read, it said that he reached out to her and then they started corresponding together.
Maybe she's like a
So I don't,
family friend.
I was thinking maybe she was a friend of another inmate. I'm sending you one of the pictures that she's sent to him, I guess, while he's in prison. She looks like her face is blurred out, but she reminds me of what's the actress's name? Coolidge. I don't remember her. Jennifer. I think it's Jennifer Coolidge. She's in like Legally Blonde, and she plays like the ditzy older blonde lady. But this picture of her where she's like biting her finger, trying to be seductive. I don't know. That's the vibe I get, is like just that goofy bend and snap.
Yeah. Yeah. Stifler's
But
mom.
yeah, Stifler's mom.
I forget what I was gonna say because I know there was a connection to your other cases. You do like the ones that span over long chunks of time.
Dude, when I read that Levi and the hammer, the one I did on Valentine's Day, Levi Norwood, the kid that my son
And
knew,
also the hammer.
and he used a hammer also, like, what's with the Levis and hammers? If your
What's
name
with
is
the
Levi and you're
Andrea and the hammers?
what?
Yeah, that's you.
I do nothing with hammers
Other than
except
research
hammer.
them, techniques, handling styles.
No, ma'am.
I don't understand. Like, what did he need a hammer carrying around for anyway? He was a wheel stapler. Or
Clamper.
clamper. I was gonna say, as soon as they said it, it didn't sound right.
Well, I'm curious how you start a wheel clamping business. Does he get, and then how do you end up being one of those people that goes out and puts a boot on somebody's car, but you're sitting there leaving your van to get tickets? Isn't that what gets these people's vehicles the boot on them in the first place?
Well, I feel like it's when they're illegally parked.
Yeah, it's true.
And it can also be like those private tow companies where you just go to businesses who have problems with people parking in their parking lots, like they're commuting somewhere and they're supposed
Yeah,
to be. So just being like, hey, you got a problem? I got a boot.
yeah. I just think it's disgusting that they think he's connected to so much craziness. Like the pedophile ring, that, when I read that, I was like, what the heck?
I don't understand how that's still
Oh,
a thing.
oh, and then the guy that I mentioned, I almost forgot to mention this one. I made me a mental note and it almost leaked out my brain hole. But the guy that he would later say was his accomplice that was driving when Levi hopped out and beat the hairdresser Irma on the head. Police would later investigate him because Levi would say he was his accomplice, but there was no proof that Levi and this man worked together to assault these women. So that guy
Yeah,
got
but they
away with
didn't.
whatever,
But they didn't do a whole lot to research the other one, so that he admitted to.
right?
So I
So I
wouldn't say
think
that that doesn't mean he was lacking the assistance.
oh, I for sure believe that there was, like, I don't mean to throw stones here, but like the guy Ricky, if he knew that Levi was
Don't
an
feel
adult
bad
having,
throwing stones. He was throwing hammers.
no. I'm talking about his coworker Ricky. If he knew that Levi was having sex with an underage girl and offered to sell her to him and he did nothing about it,
It's
like,
because the price was too high.
but that's Levi Bellfield and his murderous raping ways.
Thanks for all that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.